you guys ever noticed that the most creative ideas in gaming often come from the most random places that you thought would just have most barren ideas, like small indie studios, passionate modders, or just fan communities keeping old games alive? Ironically, though, these are the same groups of people that are the most hurt by a system that was meant to protect their innovation: patents. Patents were originally designed to reward inventors by giving them temporary exclusivity. The idea was quite simple: if you make something new, you should get the first chance to profit from it, or at least protect it and manage how it's used. But somewhere along the way, the patent system became less about innovation and more so about controlling an idea. And a few industries have suffered from that more than gaming. Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another video. My name is Master21, and we're almost there at 200 subscribers. If we can get there by the end of this year, that would be really cool. It would mean a lot. So make sure to like this video and make sure to subscribe, and comment down below what you think about the topic. If you don't like it, then dislike it, but at least comment just for the engagement. We need that engagement. But anyways, yeah. So now, what is a patent? Now, a lot of people don't really understand what a patent is, but they do just see it as a source of negativity within the gaming industry, and that's fair because it's been in a lot of hot water recently with the recent Nintendo versus palworld stuff, and how Nintendo's been abusing patents in different parts of the world to sort of control how palworld can make their game. And we've already seen it affect palworld with the idea that like they can't throw the pal sphere anymore. You have to sort of just like toss it out. You can't really like throw it around anymore. And so let's discuss what a patent briefly is. A patent is a government issued monopoly, essentially. When you invent something genuinely new and useful, whether it's a mechanical process, a computer algorithm, or even a gameplay system, you can just file a patent that prevents anyone from using, selling, or producing the idea for about 20 years, give or take. To get one, you have to describe the invention in extreme technical detail, prove it's unique and novel, and explain how it works. Once it's granted, anyone who uses that technology must either pay a license or wait until the patent expires. In theory, it's sort of like a fair trade. You share your invention with the world in exchange for temporary protection. But in gaming, where creativity comes from remixing existing ideas and building off of them, that exclusivity can bottleneck progress. Let's start with one of the most famous examples of patent abuse in modern gaming: Warner Bros. Nemesis system from Middle-earth: Shadows of Mordor. The Nemesis system was brilliant. It created a hierarchy of procedurally generated enemies that remembered what the player did, evolved, and fought for dominance within that world. It was immersive and fresh, one of the best uses of emergent storytelling in the AAA industry. But instead of inspiring the industry, Warner Bros. Locked it away behind a patent that meant no other developer could even use or even adapt similar systems without legal risk. Think of games like the original Hello Neighbor, right? It had a character that would adapt to the player and would, every time the player was caught, they would build new defense mechanisms to prevent the player from entering in and breaking in and getting to whatever progress they did, and their pathing would change, right? Now it's a little more different. I don't even know if that would be allowed if we were to make games similar to that. Would that even be allowed? Who knows, right? For almost a decade, right, this single patent has scared developers from experimenting with AI hierarchies or persistent enemy memory systems, right? It's like someone like patented health bars, right? Imagine patenting a health bar and now no one can ever use that, right? Now you have to come up with a weird way, like a health circle or something like that, right? It's an idea that became foundations for the medium, right? And now it's like a tragedy that Warner Brothers wanted all of this credit. It's that their legal claim essentially froze an entire branch of game design. Players lose innovation, developers lose their freedom, and again, only the lawyers win, because if you try and use the system, then the patent holder is usually always going to win that lawsuit. Now, for something almost comically specific, right? Namco's loading screen minigames from the 1990s. Back when CD-based consoles had long loading times, Namco invented a clever way to keep players entertained, letting them play minigames in between loading zones. I think like Galaga, right? That had loading screen minigames, right? It was sort of like a small quality of life innovation that everyone really liked. Like, what can you really do wrong, right? It's like you're giving us a little brevity in between the gameplay, and it's also loading, right? So it's like killing two birds with one rock. But Namco patented the idea itself, right? Not the game, not the code, but the concept of a playable loading screen. As a result, no other developer could legally include an interactive loading sequence for nearly 20 years. 20 years. Do you know how many games have come out in 20 years? Do you know how many consoles have come out in 20 years, right? Players just sat staring at spinning wheels, right? That's why, like, Namco's the reason why Sonic 06 had such bizarre loading times, and it was like 80% loading times, right? You can do anything that's loading times. Now when we look at some games like Sonic Frontiers, there's at least these little mini game exercises you can do to remember how to play the game. When the patent finally expired, some studios began experimenting with them, but ironically, the industry had already moved towards faster solid-state drives, making the idea completely obsolete anyways. This is what happens when patents outlive their relevance, innovations get delayed, and when it's finally allowed again, the moment has passed. There's no point, right? Everything loads super fast now, for the most part, and there's just no point. You can't really stick a minigame in there, right? What's the point of playing a minigame for like 3 seconds, right? Unless your attention span is actually that low that you need a minigame in between the loading zones to keep yourself that immersed in the game. But I don't know, you never know these days. To be fair, patents aren't always destructive. Sometimes they can sort of encourage innovation, right? When used responsibly. And ironically, it's Nintendo, I think, that does a pretty good job at this sometimes, right? Nintendo's Joy-Con controllers are a rare example of good faith patents. Nintendo patented not just for the hardware, but also detachable reconfigurable design, and this patent helped them protect their research investment and prevent cheap clones from flooding the market immediately after launch. The protection gave Nintendo a competitive edge long enough to recover development costs and refine the concept. Meanwhile, other companies could still make their own motion-based or modular controls. They just have to innovate differently. And that's how the system usually does work in most patent sense in other industries, right? Protection that encourages others to create around the idea, not to avoid it entirely, right? Nintendo's patent didn't lock down the entire genre or a mechanic. It guarded a unique hardware form factor, right? It's like protecting the Wii from just being made cheaply around the world, right? That's how typically you want to make a patent, is to protect things that are actually unique and not something that is a basic bare bones idea. Now, the ripple effect of bad patents is just that patents in gaming have often just become a weapon. And, everyone knows, like, obviously it's like Nintendo that does this shit all the time, right? Large publishers use them defensively to scare smaller developers from encroaching on their mechanics. Meanwhile, patent trolls who make no games at all buy up expired or vague patents just to sue studios that accidentally reassemble their claims. This creates a chilling effect. Indie developers self-censored ideas out of fear of being crushed in court, right? Like, you do not want to mess with these patents, right? Because again, that's an easy victory for the patent holder, and there's literally zero defense you can do for that because it's obvious you're infringing on their patent. And when creativity becomes risky, progress slows down. And games usually thrive on the iteration of itself, right? Building upon what came before. Think of how Dark Souls inspired dozens of Souls. Like, imagine if Miyazaki had patented the Souls-like formula, how like you could dodge a boss and like the way you can like go around fighting a boss. Like, that's a mechanic that could be theoretically patented, right? Or like how Minecraft led to countless sandbox titles. Imagine if Mojang had patented that, a sandbox title like that. That would be insane. The landscape of gaming in general would just be a lot poorer had these companies made that decision, but luckily they did not. Now, some argue that without patents, big ideas could be instantly stolen, and that studios investing millions deserves the rights to protect this work. And that's not necessarily wrong, all right? Patents do have a place in the industry. In industries like pharmaceuticals or engineering, sure. Patents make sense because they protect years of research and billions in costs, right? But in gaming, the creative process just generally moves a lot faster. Most innovation comes from the recombination and not simply raw invention, right? Like, no one can ever reinvent the wheel in gaming, but in pharmaceuticals, there's typically new medicines or in engineering, there's new like structural bases and stuff like that could be invented, and those are usually patented for the sake of keeping them. And it's not like patents last forever, right? They last for 20 to 35 years. So the same system that protects a new drug formula doesn't necessarily fit in the creative art form where two developers might naturally invent similar mechanics. The real issue isn't actually the patents themselves, in my opinion, right? It's the way that they're used. Imagine if patents in gaming had a shorter lifespan, right? Maybe 5 years, or maybe even just 3 years. Right? Imagine if they only applied to specific code implementations and not entire gameplay ideas. That would preserve credit without strangling the creativity, right? Because ultimately, games are culture. Imagine patenting a culture. Imagine patenting a TV like style, okay? And culture evolves by sharing, remixing, and building on what came before, right? It's the iteration of the process. When patents became sort of like a like prison bars for creativity. The very thing that they're meant to protect is what dies first, right? The innovation, the process of making a game. Imagine making a game harder to make because now you have to go around a core idea that you want to use. You can no longer do that. So next time you wonder why certain mechanics vanish for decades, or why few companies dominate games, just remember, it's not the lack of imaginations of other people, it's the paperwork that the bigger companies have. So if you like what you saw, hit the like button, press subscribe. I'm out. If you agree, make sure to tell me in the comments below. If you disagree, tell me what you disagree with. I think the Nintendo example works a little bit better because, it's a way that other companies can like see like, okay, they're doing this. How can we do this but better? Okay, they're not patenting controllers. They're not patenting schematics of a controller. They're patenting the way that the controllers are attached to the Switch themselves. That's why I think it works a little more than say Xbox trying to patent their like controller layout. I think that's just a lot better because a lot of controllers use that controller layout. So yeah, if you like what you saw, hit that like button, press subscribe. I'm out. Peace.